2, 1. Good morning, District 25. We are excited that you are here with us today, and we've got a very, very special treat. Yes, that's right. This year, or rather at the end of this year, Division B and Division D directors, Kelsey Dean and Brandi Wesley, decided, you know what? We're going to take TLI up a notch. And they decided to put on speaker to trainer. That's right. They're going to be doing this workshop today for you all. And we are so excited they did because they're making this not just the TI module, but very specifically tailored just for you in D25. And I'm excited to hear it. I hope you are too. So without further ado, I will step back and be your Zoom master today because that's what I like to do. And I'll let Brandi and Kelsey take over the show. So Brandi and Kelsey, welcome to the lectern.
Thank you,
Yay!
Jesse. Hi, everybody.
Hello. Good morning.
Thanks for coming today. Like Jesse mentioned, we have adapted the From Speaker to Trainer module that comes from Toastmasters International to be specific to D25 and how we conduct TLI's officer training sessions. The first thing we want to show you is today's agenda. So next slide, please, sir. In Toastmasters, properly trained club and district officers make the difference between a healthy, exciting, growing club and district versus a weak, ineffective, falling apart club or district. Trainers provide instruction, but they're not school teachers. We're all adults here. Most of us are public speakers here, and we want to take that into account when we start facilitating officer sessions.
Yes, Kelsey, that's right. Trainers are facilitators. Giving information is a relatively small portion of their job. The bulk of the work is facilitating discussion like we're going to be doing today and conducting participative exercises. Trainers involve the participants in the program. They don't just allow the participants, to just sit back and listen. So today we're going to discuss how to become effective trainers.
Specifically, there's 5 steps that we're going to go over today. You'll participate in a variety of exercises that can be adapted to almost any training.
Yes, you will. We're also going to discuss techniques for facilitating those discussions, not just reading from the PowerPoint, which is information is also important, but just having that discussion with those members in your officer training, as well as using various visual aids and how to use them to enhance your presentation. By the end of today's session, all of you will know how to present an effective training program.
So the steps that we're going to go over today are on your screen. The first thing we're going to do in an officer training session is use a gap analysis process to determine what your audience needs. And then we're going to teach you how to adapt the content on the fly because you're just finding out what your audience needs. So you can adapt the content to what they need. So every time you teach an officer training session, every time you facilitate an officer training session, it's going to be a little bit different because the needs of your audience are going to be a little bit different. After you conduct that gap analysis and adapt the content, you want to choose the right training method. There is more than one, and you want to use more than one. Just like we learn vocal variety is important to being a speaker, changing up your training methods is important to be an effective facilitator. The next step we're going to talk about is managing difficult behavior, and there's a lot to that process. We're going to hopefully make it easier for you to manage that difficult behavior, and then we'll talk about evaluations and why they're important and how to do them. And spoiler alert, the district makes it easy for you.
I love it when things are easy for me. Thank you. Well, let's talk about first the difference between a speaker and a trainer. We're all speakers. We have to all be speakers. We're all part of Toastmasters. So earlier we mentioned that there is a difference between a speaker and a trainer. And the purpose of the speaker is to inform. We're going to persuade. We're going to entertain. It's a one-way communication. So as a speaker, we speak and the audience listens, right? Well, as a trainer, we use a two-way communication to ensure that everyone is involved in the learning process. We want to make sure that they're getting what we're saying. And you know what, as trainers, we learn too, and we learn from them. It's a two-way communication. The trainer provides the information for the audience to apply after attending the training to motivate the audience to actively participate in the program. And we're going to do that today. So right now we're just giving you the initial information, but we're going to want some engagement as well. To create a learning environment, the trainer spends, I'm going to say, at most 30% of their time lecturing. So if you think about being in an officer TLI session and you have a lot of new officers in there, they're going to need a little bit more information about what to expect this upcoming year, right? So you're in an hour session, about 20 minutes of that time should be lecturing and telling them these are the things that you're going to do. But that can vary depending on your audience, as Kelsey mentioned, and as we'll go into more detail later. But the remainder of that time is used in actually applying that material and interacting with the participants. If you tell someone that their particular steps or their particular duties are one thing, okay, so how do I implement that in my club, right? So the process of training differs from speaking as well. Instead of talking to the audience, I'm talking with the audience. I'm asking what it is that they know. What is it that they don't know? What questions do they have? We don't necessarily always do that when we're giving a speech, right? The trainer compares that of what they need to know, what they want to know, and then fills in that missing information. That's a little bit of that gap analysis that Kelsey mentioned. Now, a speaker uses humor and anecdotes as their primary tools for an effective presentation. And trainers do that too, but then they also incorporate those lectures, the role plays, the exercises, the case studies, and those demonstrations. So since these tools are essential to trainers, we'll discuss those in detail a little bit later as well. So the final difference between a speaker and a trainer lies in the feedback on the presentation. Now, a speaker receives immediate feedback through applause. And then, of course, if you're in a Toastmasters meeting, you get that evaluation there from that one person. But a trainer receives feedback through not only written evaluations from the audience, which again, we'll talk about later, but also through observation. I can see on the faces of the participants to see if it's resonated with them. And then I can also, throughout the year, see if they were able to apply what they learned in that session. So just a little bit of a different way in getting that feedback as a facilitator. So hopefully that helps to understand a little bit more about the difference between giving a speech and conducting a training program. We're going to focus on the steps of leading an effective TLI officer training session. There we go.
And these steps you can read on the screen, so I'm not going to read to you. That's one of my first hints, tips, and tricks for you. Don't read the screen to them. They can read too. Okay, but you can talk about what's on the screen without actually reading the exact words. You may have noticed back on that first slide about course objectives, I didn't read those course objectives from the screen word for word, but I did talk about the content of what was on the slide. So the first step that we're going to talk about today is conducting that gap analysis. And the reason that that is important is because you're going to have a mixture of people's skill level in your sessions. And the gap analysis really helps you identify what their current skill level is versus the required skill level. You're going to go into this session knowing the required skill level because Toastmasters International provides you certain training materials for each of those officer positions that lets you know the skills that you're supposed to be going over with them. Now, what they already know about those skills is going to differ based on their experience in Toastmasters and whether they've already served in that officer position before. So the first step is determining their needs. You're going to do a short little intro section that talks about how long they've been in Toastmasters, whether they've served in that particular officer position before, how long they've served in that officer position, and you're going to have a great mixture of, this is my first time serving as president, I've been a Toastmaster for 6 months, and it's June, and they haven't even really officially been in that position at all for any amount of time yet. So that's one extreme of zero experience. And then you may have the opposite extreme of someone who's been a president 6 times, not in a row, because Toastmasters doesn't encourage that, but 6 times before. It's the winter TLI session. And so this is the 2nd time in a year they've been to this president training. And so you're going to have to figure out And we're going to give you the tips and tools to do that, how to adapt what you're teaching them for those different experience levels. Another thing that you're going to have to adapt for is different participants, different clubs do things differently, and that's okay. And so it's important to let them know that as you're talking about the tasks and duties that any one officer position performs, that club may do it a little different, and that's okay. And that's part of why you want to include all of the different experience levels in your club, because just because you haven't experienced a club doing X spot this way, this other person in the audience may have experienced that position that way. Next slide, please.
Oh, okay. That sounds so scary, Kelsey. A gap analysis, I feel like I'm in a corporate environment, but I know that it's not that difficult once we break it down. So thank you so much for that explanation. And we will continue. We're going to do a little exercise that kind of helps you with that as well. So whew. All right. But first, when you've determined those deficiencies in performance, you've conducted that gap analysis, you've arrived at what the participants need to know. And this is when you'll adapt your officer training content to your audience's needs. Now, before we do that, I might geek out a little bit. I'm really into adult learning theory. So I won't try to go too far in a tangent, but I want to just kind of review some aspects of the adult learning theory. This was conducted by Dr. Malcolm Knowles. He's a well-known authority in adult learning, and he developed several principles about adult learning, 4 of which we'll cover today. And it's important to integrate these principles into your adapted officer training content. And I want to just add that when I'm going through these, think of yourself as a learner. I mean, you're a learner here today, but think of yourself as a learner in even just a TLI officer session. And then what I want you to do when we're done, and I'll bring this back up, is to say, okay, now that you can understand the importance of these things, hopefully it makes a little bit more sense as to why it's important as a facilitator to make sure that these are incorporated. So the first one that you see here is, well, first, let me just say that adults decide for themselves the importance of the material based on its usefulness and its relevance. For example, you came here today because you had an idea of how important the material would be based on its relevance, right? And we also have a wealth of knowledge and experience that others may find helpful. In a good officer training session, facilitators take advantage of the valuable resources and the shared experiences that adults can provide. So let's look at this list here. As adults, think about yourself as someone who's learning. We must be able to relate the learning to our goals. If I started talking about accounting, there's a couple of people here that would be interested, but I might lose some of y'all, right? So adults want to be involved in the learning process. That's why it's important for the facilitator to solicit participants' reasons or their needs for attending the training program at the beginning. So the training material and the discussion can be adjusted accordingly. This creates a captive audience, and then you're giving them what they asked for, right? And this goes back to what Kelsey said. If I've been a president 6 times, I know these things, I know what you're going to say. So how can you make this learning relative to what I don't know, or, make it interesting for me? That's what we want to think about. And the training material must be related to the participants' experiences. You want to blend the content of the officer training session with the background and the experience of your participants, going back to that gap analysis. You want to make use of their experience by involving them in the discussions and the exercises. The benefit is that the participants often can contribute their personal anecdotes and their tips that the trainer may not even have considered. Again, going back to what Kelsey said, clubs do things differently. I never thought that I could do it that way. Oh, it never dawned on me. That's a good idea. That's the type of discussion and conversation you want to have. Let's look at number 3. The adults are motivated to learn when they identify a need to learn. You want to talk about the things you've learned. So we're in that officer session. I'm a VPPR. So if I'm in the VPPR session, I know what helped me in that role. This is an opportunity for me to share that with new officers and tenured officers, and we have that discussion. especially when you're talking with folks that are going to be doing the same role that you've done many times before, or maybe once before. New officers are there to learn. Experienced officers can learn new ways to perform that same task. So you see where we're going here. We want to just have that conversation, but the adult learning theory tells us it needs to make sense. So one last thing is that adults want practical answers for today's problems. So when presenting material, you want to make sure that it's relevant to their daily tasks or problems. Emphasize how the learning can be applied. If the material presented is too theoretical, participants will have difficulty kind of understanding its application. I don't even know what that means. I'm new, I'm 6 months into Toastmasters. Think of it like this. You may have attended the same officer training multiple times, but today's problems are very much different than those in previous years. Let's take COVID, for example. We went from in-person to, what is this screen? So those are the things you want to think about. So let's go to the next slide. And we're going to put the adult learning theory into action by considering your potential officer training audience makeup. Here's where we're going to take what Kelsey explained with the gap analysis and what I've just explained with adult learning theory. And we're going to talk about what do you do when all of the officers in your training session are new. We want to talk about how, what tasks they need to perform. We want to focus on including discussions about those tasks, right? So everyone, picture it, Cicely, new officer training, and everyone there is new. They've never held an officer training or officer position before. Remember, I said about 20 minutes or 30% of your time, you're going to go through those tasks of what it is that they need to do. Now let's discuss it. Let's just not lecture it. What are some things that you've seen your prior officers do in that role? What are some things that you've already been told by those previous officers as far as what you need to do? Have that discussion. Okay, so you go into the class, you do the gap analysis, and oh my goodness, these folks have been training or been performing this role longer than I have. Oh my gosh. Well, we're gonna refer as needed to the TLI information, right? But now I'm pulling out my notebook and I want to know what it is that you know. And we're going to sit down, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to touch on the things you need to do in that role. But now we get to have a whole networking session. We're building a network of others that are in that role. We're learning about, oh, wow, so you're hybrid. How do you do it? Oh, wait, you're in person. What is it that, how do you do it? And we have that discussion. So it's much different than if it's all new officers. But then we have a hybrid of both. So as a facilitator, I need to ask the new officers what they've already heard about it, maybe things they've already performed. And of course, the experienced officers, I know that you've done it before. Now I've got to mesh that together. Now this can be a little tricky. I don't want to lose the attention of the experienced officers, but I don't want to abandon the needs of the new officers. So what we're going to do is just a hybrid of the mix. I am still going to make sure my new officers have that attention that they need. We're going to go through the steps. But you know what, experienced officers, you don't get to just sit back. I need you to help me help them. We're still going to have that conversation. We're still going to be interactive, but we want to make sure that we're addressing both the needs of the new officers, and let's network and talk about it with the experienced officers. And so you'll have a completely different experience. But this is why the gap analysis is extremely important, so that you don't lose the attention or the interest of the audience and everyone is engaged. Woo, exciting stuff.
Brandi, we have something in the chat that I feel like it's important to highlight here. Someone suggested that we make sure to tell the new officers the why.
Absolutely. You want to tell them.
Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yes, let's talk about that. Why? Why is it that, now let me just ask, because now my mind's going, beep, beep, beep. Are we saying why they need to be there or why the steps are important?
There wasn't specific information around the why in the chat, but I'm going to go with both. Let's talk about why they need to be there, because let's face it, a lot of people ask, why do I have to keep coming back to training? Why? And then also, the why of the different tasks that they're performing.
Well, why do we have to keep, I was a VPPR twice in a row. That information never changed. Why do I need to be there? Great question. No, my steps didn't change. Well, maybe they did, because the first year we were completely virtual. I needed to know what to do. I was a new officer. I needed to know what was expected of a VPPR. I also got to meet some really cool people, and I was able to, throughout the year, touch base with them and say, this has come up, what do I do? So that was kind of cool. But the second year, it changed. This kind of goes back to what are today's problems. So the second year we were hybrid. Well, I don't know how to do that because I was virtual the first year. So now what do I do? Well, now I need to learn how to address my market as a VPPR. How do I do that in a hybrid world? I got to print out brochures and make them digital. What the heck? But you get to learn those things. Things change every year. And again, you get that networking. You get to meet with people. I have met so many amazing people throughout the district just from the TLI officer training sessions. You get to meet with those folks. You get to have that discussion and say, oh my gosh, hey, have y'all seen the new, from the winners of the contest website? The VPPR there, I want to become his best friend. That website was amazing. And again, I've done it for 2 years, but I already see a need to continue learning. You want to learn, you want to network, but you want to learn what's not in the book, what is not provided by TI, that the experienced officers can share with you. And then why do we?
I'm sorry.
No,
I love
ahead.
that we are sharing the why, not just for new officers, but for experienced officers. Before we get into the why of all of the tests that we're supposed to perform in an officer training session, can we get some participation from the audience? Since you guys have been hearing Brandi and I talk for 22 whole minutes now, we want to break up the monotony here because that's what we're teaching you to do in your sessions. So who wants to tell us the why for them? Why do you keep coming back to officer training?
I would.
Please.
I keep coming back to officer training because it's a Toastmasters International requirement and it helps our club achieve the club goal just by showing
DCP point.
DCP point.
Easy right. DCP point, right? You come to a TLI session for a few hours on a random Thursday night, bam, DCP point.
Also, it's fun. It's
okay,
fun
that's my favorite reason right there. Who else? Who wants to share the why for them?
Hi, Toastmasters. I'm Angela. And the reason why that I come or am here this morning is because actually this is my first one and I need to understand as VP of Education for our Toastmasters. So this is information that I need being my first time.
Absolutely. First timers need all the information, right? Their why is huge. Mary Beth, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
In addition to what has been said, my why is to reconnect with fellow Toastmasters and to meet new Toastmasters members.
Ooh, I've heard networking and meeting new people. I've never heard the reconnect part. I love it. Eva.
Hi, everyone. I like to attend these things because there's always going to be something new. And I want to make sure that I get all the new information because TI does update, and I want to make sure I have the most updated information and have people like Kelsey and Brandi and Jesse and everybody else, keeping us on top of all our training. So thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Your payment for that plug comes later. Thank you. Thank you for that.
And that's recorded.
I wanna talk about something that Eva said there. Things change. Brandi mentioned that also. And we all know that Toastmasters International isn't maybe the timeliest with their updates. And so the best way to get the most updated information is to come talk to Toastmasters who are in it, doing it, living and breathing it all day, every day, right? Okay, maybe not all day, maybe not every day, but Toastmasters are usually really involved in the process and we know what's happening on the ground of our clubs much better than Toastmasters International, who maybe hasn't had a chance or manpower to update their materials in a few years or so. So the best way to get that most recent updated information is come talk to Toastmasters who are doing it now. That's a great call out, Eva. Thank you for that. Patty, you're next.
Yes, along the similar vein, to club members who do not get to the district level, the club officers are the face of the brand. So we need to continually stay trained and yes, stay up to date on any changes.
I love that. I want to introduce a word, consistency. What Patty was talking about there is consistently providing the same or correct information. And like she said, the club members don't always see anybody from the district. And so one of the ways that we can introduce some consistency in the process is because we want every Toastmaster to have a great experience, right? Every member to have a great experience. One of the best ways to do that is to introduce some consistency. Great call out, Patty. Thank you. Donna Young. I don't know why I have to say your first and last name, Donna Young.
Just one of those things. I do it to recharge. Because of course, oh, we just run my club just perfectly. No, we don't. Of course we don't. We get into a rut. And one way to get out of a rut is to hear others describe what they do. And it says, shall I tweak the recipe? You know, shall I put a cherry on top of what I'm doing already? It's encouraging to hear others succeed, and where others have problems, it's encouraging to realize that I've conquered the one problem they have and maybe I can share a result. But it's motivation. It recharges me.
I love it. Reinvigorating yourself and your club. Tessie.
Thank you, Kelsey. Why I think we should always be going to TLI is because information in the training session format that we get from TI is not always inclusive of everything we do. By listening to others, we learn more about what we should be doing, what we are doing, and what we're doing we don't need to do. So it's just an update thing for me.
Excellent. Staying in touch with what's really going on right now. Thank you. Lori, you're next.
I think the main reason that I actually have done the training as a facilitator this last year, and always in the last 10 or 12 years before that have been one of the students on the other side. What I found the difference is it shows the other people that you can do it. It encourages them to continue and know that, hey, this person actually was on our seat and now they've grown. So it's an encouragement for them to grow.
I love it. I want to talk a little bit more about what Lori has said here. One of the ways to keep experienced officers engaged in the session is to let them contribute to the conversation, share their experience. And like Lori is saying, them sharing that experience teaches the new people, hey, they've been where I've been, and now look at them. I can get there too. They can see themselves X number of years down the road as a more experienced officer, Toastmaster, etc. And it gives them hope, motivates them to keep going, maybe motivates them to take on that next challenge because they've heard someone talk about when I was first this and now I've been this a lot. Thank you, Lori. David.
Yes, part of the reason that keeps me coming back is not just the officer session itself, but the other learning opportunities around it. The general session is always great, and there are supplementals as well that allow you to expand and go in different directions. So that's another thing that I like about the TLI and the way District 25 does it. So
it's like almost like we
learning. So
it's almost like we planted David in the audience to make that comment to plug supplemental sessions. There's extra stuff. The general session, it's a different session every year. It's awesome that we get all of these extra opportunities. It's not just about officer training.
You're right, Kelsey. And everything that we're teaching you today, we're referring to the TLI officer training, but it applies to supplementals as well. It also applies for when, each year we have the general session within the TLI. Part of it's district sponsored, but part of it's division sponsored. So for our division leaders, for our area leaders, this will apply for your general session facilitation as well. And this is not just for the TLI officer session. You can apply this to any portion of the TLI session.
I want to highlight something that's in the chat again. I think showing up to officer training also sets an example for the new officers to attend training. I love that. Motivate the newcomers, give back, be the example, show them the way.
Look at
Anybody
that.
else want to share their
Incentives.
why?
Well, wait, Lori brings up a good point, and this was something that Nipa brought up as well. So we're doing this for learning as both a student and as a facilitator, but there's so many incentives. There's like some additional what's in it for me's. So you get those pathway credits if you're leading an officer session. Hello, you get those DCP points. So there's so many different things that kind of come out of what it is that you're doing it to learn. I have a question though. We've gotten so many different responses and they're great and it is all true and I love it, but I kind of want to know, based on everyone that's here today, can you drop in the chat how many years you've been a club officer?
I have a feeling the chat's about to blow up.
It is going to blow up. And this is kind of a, gap analysis.
3, 7, 11, 13, half a year, 21 years, 6 years. Wow.
Oh, I feel so inexperienced. Look at this.
22 years.
I just
4, 5, 6. 5 seems to be a popular one.
It does.
But we have 21, 22. There's a lot of experience in today's room.
There is. And I just want to point out, Jen, with the half a year, I became a club officer in around the same amount of time. You can do it. Look at that. See, Angela, I'm related to, but I value very much the experienced officers and all of the knowledge that they can share with us.
Multiple clubs, multiple officer positions. Let's talk about the why for that for a second. When you come to an officer's training session, D25 lets you attend that one particular officer session. We'll use president as an example. If you also serve as the secretary, I don't suggest you do that, by the way, but just hypothetically, if you also serve as secretary, we give you credit for that if you stay for a supplemental session. What should you do the next time you come to officer training? Maybe switch those up, maybe attend the secretary session and go to a supplemental to get credit for the president. So it offers you many opportunities to get what you need, to get the credit you need, to get the actual training you need, to get extra topics to make you better. The why is endless, y'all. Endless. Real quick for a minute, let's talk about the why of the actual tasks. So we talked about why that we keep coming back. Why do we keep talking about the actual tasks?
Well, we kind of go back to that gap analysis, right? So if I'm a new officer, I probably have no idea. I might have an inkling, I might have an idea of what a president does or what a VPE does, but do I really know if I've not performed that role? Probably not. In fact, I can tell you right now, if you put me in a VPE position, I'm probably going to look at the screen for a little bit and try to figure it out. But that's not what we want you to do. We want to explain to you what it is that a VPE does. What is it that a secretary does? What is it that TI is expecting of that role? And let's go through those and explain those as much as we need to so that you have an understanding of that expectation. Then we have those additional discussions. So for example, again, I've just been VPPR. If I have VPE, I'm in that training session, I'm probably going to look to someone like Kelsey who has done that role before. Now the facilitators told me everything I need to do, but Kelsey, tell me the down and dirty. That's what I want to know. What are some things that you've encountered that worked? Some things that you encountered that didn't work? What should I be looking out for? That's not always on those slides provided by TI.
If something hasn't worked in the past, does that mean you never try it again?
Well, maybe it works differently in a different club. Maybe it didn't work for yours because of the way that your club is ran, but you know what? It sounds like it would be something that would work in my club.
I've even experienced a situation where we tried something in my home club before I was in my home club and it didn't work, but let's try it again because we have new people now. Times
Oh,
are
that's true
different
too.
now. Things are done differently now. What didn't work 4 years ago might work perfectly for what we need right now today with these members in this situation. So it's a constant evolving trial and error process. I'm seeing
So
a very
Craig,
important note in the chat. There is
yes.
over 100 years of club officer experience in this room. Let's just take a moment. Thank you all for serving your clubs, your members, District 25.
That's a lot of experience. That's a lot of knowledge
A
that
lot.
can be shared. Oh my goodness. But I want to touch on what Craig is saying, that in their club, they're training their members to take our office for the future. So you're doing successor training. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what it sounds like to me.
That's what it sounds like.
I have also encouraged people. Did you know you could do this? You can go to officer training before you've been elected to that position. If you just want to find out if you're interested in that position, you can go to officer training and learn about the position to help you decide if you want to run for that officer position. Did you know you could go if you hadn't been elected?
No. Huh. So
I did
as
it.
the years, well, I've got light bulbs and things going off. So as the years going on, and we're in the winter, right? We're 6 months in. And you know what? Next year, I might want to be, I don't know, a treasurer. I want to see what that's like. You mean to tell me I can go to that session well in advance before I even put my name in the hat for nomination, and I can find out what's involved and decide then if that's what I want to do?
You can go to that session and learn about it before you say to anybody, hey, I might want to be treasurer, because we all know once you say I might want to be something, especially around Joyce Trimble, you're going to be that.
Yeah, I'm a Joyce Trimble recruit. I understand. No, that's really cool though. That's really good information, because you may just be, hey, I've been interested in that. And you might be someone who hasn't vocalized that yet. It's just something that you just kind of piques your interest. But it's really cool to know that you can go to those officer training sessions and find out.
I see another comment in the chat that I want to highlight. Grow your leadership pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to give us a little bit more about what you mean about that? Person that put that in the chat. I don't want to call you by name, but
Yeah.
thanks.
So in our club, we just did officer elections, and they're basically the same members except for one, but we have some new members who have great potential. We're going to start, maybe even have some sort of speeches or other platforms to where we can encourage these other members. We just had elections, but we have another set of elections coming up in 6 months. We see so much potential in you. So we really need to start talking to those other members, because we're ready to rotate off and to see new faces on our board. We need to grow our leadership pipeline for my club, and some other clubs may have the same situations.
And so it would be really important to encourage those potential people to come to officer training before they consider taking a nomination or running for a particular office. In addition, they could also perform assistant officer position roles, intern officer position roles.
So important. I've been thinking about that this past week. Yes.
So I'm officially the VPE, but maybe you, new member, want to learn how to be VPE. Come do it with me for a little while so that you can run next term. That's that succession planning that was mentioned earlier.
I love that.
I'm seeing in the chat another reference to Joyce Trimble. Yes, we're calling her out.
He's our silent sponsor.
All right. Anybody have anything else to add about their why before we move away from step 2?
I just love that there seems to be a good understanding of the why.
I love it. I love it.
Okay.
All right, we are running way ahead of time. So the next slide is going to say break, but I'm going to propose we skip that break and move on to step 3, and there will be another opportunity for a break in a more timely manner. What do you think? I see at least one thumbs
Oh, I thought we were voting. I think it's a good idea.
up. All right, next slide, please, Jesse. Step 3, choosing your training methods. Of the several training methods available, we're going to cover only 5: lecture, role play, exercise, case study, demonstration. What did I just do there that I'm not supposed to do?
Ooh, read from that slide. I can read those words, Kelsey.
Right? Okay, how could I have done that differently?
I don't know.
I could have just said, we're going to talk about these 5 training methods and let you read them yourself. I could have talked about why we're going to focus on these 5 training methods instead of any other number of training methods. There's a lot of things that I can do to talk about the content without reading the words on the screen. Next slide, please.
I like it.
First up, I'm going to talk about lecture. And the first thing here tells you to lecture no longer than X number of minutes. Okay, well, that's not very specific, Kelsey. What are you telling me that I should or shouldn't do here? What I'm telling you is this is going to vary based on your specific situation. This is one of the things that you're going to have to adapt on the fly as you're teaching a session. And you may lecture for 3 minutes when you teach this officer session this time, and you may lecture for 10 minutes at a time the next time you teach this officer session. And all of that is based on the situation that you're in, the audience that you have, the topic that you have. You may lecture for longer at a time in a VPE training position than you do in a secretary training position. The reason that you're not lecturing for longer than X amount of minutes, and that X can change, what do you think the reason is? What do you want to sit and listen to lecture for 45 minutes?
Probably not.
No,
I'm going to go with no.
It's boring at that point in time. You
Absolutely.
You lose touch with the content going on, and
you zone out and don't even hear that your name was just called to answer a question because they lectured for too long and lost you. The lecture part is a prepared talk, and it's the most used and abused technique in the training field. It's easy to abuse it by talking for too long, especially if you're very enthusiastic about the topic, right? Like, even if you're animated and excited while you lecture for 45 minutes, it's not okay, right? So the lecturing part can happen for lots of different reasons, and sometimes it is appropriate. Just don't let it go on too long before interjecting somebody else's voice, some other opportunity to do something different for a few minutes. Variety is what I'm saying. It's especially effective if you have to cover a large amount of material. And that's why I say that it might be more appropriate in some of those heavier officer positions that have more meat to them. There's some other ways to make it more effective and interactive. Don't forget to use your acquired public speaking skills. Tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you've told them. That re-emphasis, that repetitive persistence ensures retention of the material. Another way to make it more interesting is abandon the virtual lectern, especially if you're in person. You can walk around a little bit, don't read from a script, make it more of a conversation. One of the things that we are doing today, alternating lecturers. Sometimes you hear my voice, sometimes you hear Brandi's voice. That's another way to break up the monotony of a lecture. Here are some ways, some more ways to make your lecture more interesting. Use visuals that serve as memory stimulants. I just like that different wording there, stimulants.
Oh.
This is what the TLI provided materials are for, and we're going to show you exactly how to find those materials later. But you don't want to read directly from them word for word. Change the word joggers to stimulants. It just adds a little bit of variety in there. Refer to the content as a part of your discussion, but don't read it word for word. You can drop handouts in the chat for all the participants, or you can email it to them afterwards. And whether the way that you do that is not going to be dictated to you. You as a facilitator get to decide. Today, it may seem most appropriate to drop a handout in the chat right now. Next time you teach, it may be most appropriate to to email after the class is over. One of the reasons you may want to not drop the handout now is if you want them focused on what you're doing and saying. If it's an exercise that you're about to participate in or that you're going to ask them to participate in, you maybe don't want them changing their focus to a handout, so you want to send that handout to them after the session is over. Ask questions to involve the group, and then retention checks is a great way to break up the monotony of a lecture and then also check for whether they're getting what you're saying. That's another way to perform that gap analysis on the fly. Next slide, please. Time for an exercise.
I gotta get up. Do I need to stretch?
Yes, we're gonna do jumping jacks. No, I'm just teasing.
Oh,
We're gonna do a trainer exercise. I want you to think about a training session that you've attended that was really great.
This one?
It doesn't have to be Toastmasters related. It doesn't have to be this one, but it could. Recall what happened, how it happened, what the trainer did or said that made it great, and think about how that made the training effective. I'm going to give you some minutes. Jesse, play the Jeopardy music. No, I'm just kidding. We didn't cue that up. I am going to stop talking.
He probably has it though.
I am going to stop talking so that you can concentrate. So it's 9:46 and I'm going to come back to you at 10:01.
Oh, let's think. I told you he was going to have music ready to go.
Hello.
I'll say one.
Okay, hold off for just a minute. We're going to give people some time to think about a situation that they might want to talk about.
There's the music.
Everybody's thinking about a training program they attended that was most effective and what made it most effective, especially what about the trainer made it most effective. And I'm going to give you 2 or 3 more minutes. We do already have one eager participant ready to share their experiences. I love it. Thank you guys for being so participatory today. Did you have
What if I can't think of one? Yeah, what if I can't? Because I'm trying to think of one that just stands out, but I can think of bits and pieces from, I like it when this person did this and this person did that.
You mean you want to use more than one example? You've attended more than one awesome training?
I do believe that I have, yeah.
Excellent. I love it. Share as many as you want. Another minute or two. We have several more people already ready to share their experiences. I don't want to lose you by waiting too long.
I just want to add that, you know, we've talked about some things that you can incorporate, some handouts and some things, but if you're technologically savvy and you can incorporate music into your training, that's another thing that you can, another tool that you have available to you. Let me get out my notebook because I want to take notes on these answers.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and start calling on some volunteers. As these volunteers are speaking, if you're still thinking of what you might want to share, I love it. We have plenty of time so we can hear from several respondents. Lori, you have been waiting patiently. Thank you so much. Go right ahead.
I have to say, I've been to a lot of the different trainings, and there were two different sessions that stood out to me. One of the first ones was whenever I had been treasurer for a while, but I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I finally got to attend training. And our good friend Joyce was teaching it. And the room was packed. And she had a online or a presentation that she was projecting, and going through that, I learned actually what I was supposed to be doing. And the room was so packed, you couldn't fit people into the room anymore. And she gave handouts and emailed the samples of what you should be doing. And that really stood out. The second one was a secretary's training that I attended at one point, and I got to call out Greg Pick. He was teaching it. That's how I actually learned that you could count your being the facilitator or the trainer as a education speech. He emailed me later saying, hey, can you evaluate my presentation? So it's like, cool. So there was two different ways to learn that made an impact on me to keep going.
I love it. Thank you for sharing, Lori. I love that you called out someone we have in today's session, someone we've already mentioned several times in today's session. D25 members, I love us. Tessie, you're next.
Thank you. I have two instances.
Okay.
My first one was a corporate training session on telephone etiquette. And that was impressive because A, believe it or not a whole lot of people know what telephone etiquette is, but it was interactive between the trainer and the audience. So you got a lot of cross play. The second one was a Toastmaster presentation by, I believe, forgive me if I mispronounce her name because it's been a couple of years, Bobby Lai. She had a presentation on whatever it was, but it was also interactive, and she was very enthusiastic and didn't just say, this is this, what do you think, and let people talk. She worked with each individual person, and we all gained a whole lot of information. So that vibrancy really resonated with me. And I've been to several training sessions. They've all been good, but those were two that stood out in my mind.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Tessie. I heard two words there that I think embody what we're really trying to do with this exercise here. So the point of today's exercise is for you to think of what about a particular trainer that you experienced was good and made it effective that you can then incorporate into your training. And I heard interactive and vibrant. I'm going to introduce a new tool here, and I'm actually going to ask Jesse if he can run the tool part. Jesse, will you turn on annotate for us and see if you can write on our screen interactive, vibrant? While Jesse gets that ready, the rest of the people that have their hand raised, be thinking of if you can sum up something that you experienced into one word. I still want you to tell me the whole story, but if you can sum it up into one word, then we can have Jesse add these words to the screen so that you're not only learning how to use this annotate tool, but also you'll have a running list of things to incorporate into your training. David Winkowski, you are next, sir.
I want to go back to my very first training was for VPE, the first officer I held. I went to training, it was at Stacy's in person. I didn't know what to expect, but it was very welcoming, very informal. And I was, of course, the newest person at the table, and I got to speak with the other VP eds. And it was very participatory. It was very informal, and I got what I needed. So that's what I liked about it most. And also customized. There are certain situations, VP Ed is an example, when they introduced pathways, there were certain things that VP Eds needed to know. And it was very good that that the trainer was able to customize it and highlight some of those things that they had learned during their time with Pathways that a VPN needed to know. So it wasn't just a standard deck. It was putting some gems in there that, you know, you're going to run into this, keep an eye out. So, and that's highlight those things. So.
Okay, so I heard lots of things there. Informal, right? Because as adults, we all want to participate in the conversation. That's a little less formal of a training method, right? Lecture would be that more formal training method. And then a couple of things that you said there towards the end.
Yes. You want me to? No.
Go, tell me again that. Customized. That's it. That was the word that I was looking for. Yes, customized, right? And then also you talked about that they used a specific scenario. You might run into this. So scenario based. Okay. You guys are seeing Jesse type on the screen there. He is using the annotate function and he's trying to put the words so that you can see them, but also not interfere with what's on the slide in case you're still referring to the content on the slide, especially because we're doing this interactive exercise that you may need a refresher. Oh yeah, what am I supposed to be thinking about again? So I appreciate your contributions, Jesse. If you are running out of room, you can choose to stop annotating as soon as it is cumbersome for you. I'm going to keep going and let other people share just because we need that variety. We need to hear from you guys. Donna Young, you're next.
Making percentages real. So rather than say 10%, say 1 out of the 10 people in this meeting today will experience this event that I'm talking about.
Excellent. Real world examples, right? Irma, let's hear from you.
Yes, I will say in the present position that I'm holding right now and with everything that I've done, I remember when our first training held, they said, okay, everybody get your cameras ready. You won't be just sitting there trying to look at me and talk to y'all. Now I do talk, my people are in India that I talk to all the time. And he said, y'all just be ready. Y'all could be taking pictures of the screen because you're gonna want to be referencing back to that in different times of your having to do your stuff at home or on the job. And as a matter of fact, in what I'm doing, a little bit of what I get to do now, since I do travel, I am one of their trainers and I do get to I do talk to the people about that. And I always let them know, look, I've already written some notes out on how we do these different systems. And they're always telling me, oh my gosh, you're a lifesaver, send it to me. And I do, I'll go ahead and send them some of my notes. And I say, you know what, do me a favor. If you think you need to write a little something else because you didn't understand what I'm writing, you just put your little bit of notes on it so you can understand what you're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. I love it. So suggesting to the audience how they might help themselves in this situation. Take pictures of my screen here, or you might want to take notes on this particular point here, providing them notes after the fact. That way they're listening to you during the session, but you tell them ahead of time that you're going to be providing the notes so that they don't have to make sure they're getting every word down. They can actually listen to you instead of focused on writing while you're talking. I love all. Yes.
Oh, so
please.
sorry. So sorry.
No, please.
I wanted to piggyback on that because Irma brings up a great point, and that is that we all learn differently. And so we want to remember the things. We might want to try to write them down, but maybe I'm really an oral learner and I really need to hear it. So we have so many different examples of taking pictures so that I can refer back to it later. Taking the notes, maybe writing it down helps me to remember it, or maybe without me having to write it down, I can focus and have that visual learning or that oral learning to help me, because that is something we didn't necessarily, we probably won't go into an officer session and say, which way do you like to learn best, right? But we know what works for us. And so having all of those options available for your audience helps them to also retain and refer back to that information.
I love it, Brandi. You bring us full circle in this exercise, in that the point of today's exercise is to relate back all of the excellent things that you've experienced in trainers to what we're trying to teach you today. So let's talk about what Brandi said about different learning styles. That goes back to choosing your training methods, varying things up. That relates to almost all of the points that we've talked about today. Incorporating multiple learning styles in the way that you present material is addressing some of the same things that we've talked about today. Some of those words that just disappeared from the screen, being informal about your training. How does that relate to one of the steps that we've already talked about today? Somebody come off mute. Phyllis, I see your hand is raised. Nope, you took it away. I got it. I changed what I was asking.
I didn't know if you guys were like going forward. That's all. But I wanted to talk about the experience. The last experience that I really had was the last TLI training that the trio presented. And the reason why it was so enlightening for me was because it was upbeat. Oh my goodness, it is so important that, you know, when we're presenting, that we exude that energy that we want back from the participants. So not only was it upbeat, but they were all three in sync with each other. It's like they all had that same amount of energy. And I was like, wow, this is how you do it. And it was really, it's the positive energy that we give out if we want these people to keep coming back. That was just what I needed to say.
That is an awesome call out, Phyllis. So you said several things there, and I love that Jesse capitalized it, exclamation pointed it, changed the font color, all of those things are things that you can do as a trainer to really call out a great point, right? So great job, Phyllis and Jesse. Thank you both for contributing to this scenario here. But it wasn't just the upbeat that you talked about. You talked about that there were multiple trainers. We've talked about that as a technique. And then you talked about that they were in sync with each other, and that they exuded the energy that they wanted to see back from the audience. All great things that are contributing to the experience that you had. And you remember what you learned in that session because of those techniques and traits of those trainers. That's the point of this exercise.
Yes, and I love something else that Phyllis said, and that was the positivity. So this is something that we're going to be positive, right? Yay! But have you been in a session where someone says, yes, this is what we're going to do. I've enjoyed it. But you know, you're going to have those people who are, and all of a sudden the tone changes, and all of a sudden there's this negativity. And how does that make you feel? We want to be positive, even when we're discussing potential challenges. We want to be positive about it. We don't want to hide anything, but we want to be positive about the fact that, hey, you may encounter these things. You may have a difficult discussion. You may have a membership issue. What is it that we're going to do to overcome that? So you want to make sure that you continue that consistency of positivity in the training. Be real with it, be open, don't be transparent, don't hide anything, but make sure that you're positive in that, the way that you deliver that information.
I love it. I love it. I want to talk about one more thing that was in the chat that Jesse did put on the screen: welcoming. How do you welcome people to your training?
We just sit back and say, hey.
Do you get started with the lecture right away? Is that how you welcome people to your training? Yeah? Really?
No.
Okay. Okay. No. Welcome and thank you for coming today. So part of welcoming is thanking them. Did they have to be there? Maybe. Were they voluntold to be there? Maybe.
Probably.
But if you thank them for coming anyway, that could be just enough positivity to get them engaged in the conversation. You could also thank them for sharing their experience or being willing to share their experience, because you can acknowledge from the beginning, we might have some Toastmasters officers that have more experience than even I do. So I appreciate you, experienced officers, contributing to today's conversation. I'm listening. I mean, I'm watching the screen. Share.
She's visually listening.
Visually listening. Sharing is caring. I love that Care Bears quote. All right, we can move to the next slide, please, sir.
He had so many drawings. He put in so much effort.
I loved it. I loved it. It was an excellent exercise. All right, so I'm going to finish talking about the interactive methods. We've already talked about the lecturing, and now we're going to move on to role play and other types of activities. Role playing is putting someone in a particular scenario and letting them play out how that goes. When might you use that in any particular officer training session? Would you use that in your officer training session?
I think it's valuable, especially if you have a mix of new folks and tenured folks.
Absolutely. You could use the tenured folks in the role play participant that has to maybe have a difficult conversation because maybe they've had that difficult conversation before, right? It helps you have a greater awareness of the needs and feelings of other people during that role play. The next one, exercises. We've actually done some exercises today, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. Case studies are a little bit more in depth. You provide them a written scenario, and then that written scenario leaves out the ending. And so you let them come up with the ending. That is a great way to get people participating in a conversation. And you could put that case study in a written form on a slide. And again, you don't read that slide to them. You let them read it, and then you let them come off mute to provide some suggested endings or solutions to whatever problem you presented in that case study. And then demonstrations, I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. You're demoing how to do something. And the one time that I have used that the most is in VPE training. I would actually share my screen and log in to Toastmasters International and go through the steps of Basecamp and Club Central, because we all know 2 steps to approving things as a VPE. And you may have heard that we may be going to a new learning management system, and so the process may be changing soon. And so it'll be important after we switch to that new system to demo new processes like that. That's a great opportunity to use that particular method there. All right, that brings us to the end of step 3, and I feel like now is a great time for a break. What do you all think? It is 10:07.
I think so.
And we're going to give you 15 whole minutes, maybe even 17 minutes. So you can be back at 10:25.
What do we do?
Well, I'm hopefully giving you enough time to do more than one thing, because I'm imagining that several of you have to use the bathroom.
Thank you so much. I feel like after our little break that this is a difficult section to move into. So maintaining that positivity, I just want to go into the sometimes unavoidable, sometimes inevitable, difficult behavior that you might encounter within your training session. And I think it sounds worse than it is. I don't know if I like the term difficult behavior, but things that could be distracting or things that could interruptive behavior, if you will. So if you've prepared good content, which you do have the TI content, and you've done your gap assessment, then you can reduce the probability of having any type of challenges or interruptive behavior, if you will. Not all participants may be receptive to your efforts. Some may try to disrupt the group and get you off track, and you need to be able to get back on track and focus on the current topic.
Oh, wait, no, never mind.
Yes, ma'am. Did you have a question?
No, I'm just trying to illustrate what you're talking about here.
I appreciate that. If you have any questions, let us know. The chat is effective, but let's try to get through, and I may actually answer some of your questions before we get to that point, okay? Too funny. But you want to focus on the current topic by restating the topic you're currently addressing. Some of the most difficult problems you'll encounter are people problems. At times, you may have to tactfully address disruptive individuals when they continue to have a negative influence on the group. We talked about before, maintaining that positivity. It's okay to be transparent. It's okay to talk about any type of issues you have. Just try to do it with a positive influence. And you don't want to avoid any of the shy participants. Any of those people who are here today who have not contributed, I want to try to draw y'all out. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I want to give you an opportunity to say something. So let's talk about the talkative people. They're long-winded. They monopolize the entire conversation. And since it's important for other participants to have the opportunity to contribute, it's our responsibility as a facilitator to address those talkers. We want to divert their energy, suggest that maybe they participate in the act of listening, right? Or like I said to Kelsey, you can use the chat. Let's have some engagement there as well. And since these are usually maybe poor listeners, they want to say what they have to say. You want to avoid them from stealing that valuable lesson time. You want to summarize the major points that they made and then turn the discussion back to the group. If the talkers insist on participating, we're going to ask them something that's called a closed question, to which they can reply only a yes or no. We're going to talk more about that and how you can incorporate that in just a little bit. So that's the talkative people. And then we have the silent types, you know, the ones that never say anything or they keep their camera off. I'm not calling anyone out. Sometimes you do need to have your camera off, but the ones that are consistently having their camera off during the training, they could be shy or just reserved, and they rarely offer any comments in response to what we call open questions because they feel that their comment or idea might be ridiculed by the group. The solution is to include them in the discussion, encourage them to participate, support their ideas. Do they have to turn their camera on? No, we have the chat. You saw Jesse using the annotate. They can easily do that. Sometimes it's just more comfortable for them to do that. Again, we're going to ask them open-ended questions because it gives them an opportunity to express their idea. It's okay if even after you've tried to include them that they still become, have that reservation of participating. That's okay, but you just want to have that friendly look, that positivity, and listen actively and respond when you can to anything that they have to say. Ooh, what about the crabs? They're so juicy when you dip them in butter. No, not those crabs. We are talking about the ones who find fault with everything. You had us wake up so early on a Saturday morning, and then we had all of these technical issues, and then the material doesn't even apply to what I'm doing. I've been doing this for years. What are you doing? Well, that's probably what you might hear from a crowd. And if you have such pessimists in the crowd, you may hear complaints like, don't even have to participate in this exercise. I have been to this training multiple times already. And we start to encounter that negativity and we're losing that positivity. They're putting a damper on the rest of the group. You don't want to ignore them. That just gives them a license to continue. You want to declaw them. You want to acknowledge the complaints, determine if their complaints are legitimate, offer solutions. And if their problems can't be easily corrected, you just have them suggest solutions themselves and get feedback from the group. Hey guys, what do y'all think? Do you think this would be a good idea? Could this resolve this issue? If the complaints aren't justified, just suggest that you hope that they'll reserve the judgment until the program is complete. Oh, what about the know-it-alls? They know everything. You are not expert enough to teach this training class. I know it all. You can sit down, I'll take over. That can be very condescending. And it disturbs the group because often the individuals offer unsolicited opinions and contradictions, which undermine your authority. You don't want to do that. In dealing with the know-it-alls, you want to avoid getting into arguments and try to promote a win-win situation without discrediting you or the know-it-alls. Find a way to work together. Take the information that they're offering and incorporate it in the discussion. We're not talking as a facilitator to the audience, we're talking with them. So one way to acknowledge their know-it-alls, comments and conversation is to thank them for their contributions. And lastly, we have the conflict. Oh, just this slide is just so negative, isn't it? Well, occasionally disruptive people may cause a conflict among several participants. I will honestly say I've not been in these sessions, but we need to prepare for them in case it does happen. And if it does, you just want to quickly step in and play like an arbitrator before the situation escalates. Don't take sides, but concentrate on the points of agreement. Try to find a solution. Emphasize the importance of ideas rather than personalities. And if the discussion drags on and just takes away too much time, call for a break. Let's have a break. Let's come back and talk about it further. Suggest that the discussion be continued at the end of the session. Jessie is the best, by the way. And mastering skills to manage the problem participants takes time and practice. It just simply does. And I can sit here and tell you a step-by-step of how to handle this, and it will not help you because it's going to depend on the situation. Just as learning basic facilitation does. So since it's safer to make mistakes as a role player in this training session than to work on social environments, we're going to set up a role-playing situation a little bit later to get some practice on how to handle problem participants. You'll also get to some additional experience in participating in role-play exercise and observing how one is conducted. This is going to be an all hands on deck role play that we're going to do. So I've gone over some of the different types of behaviors you might encounter. If we go to the next slide, I want to talk about some of those question techniques that I mentioned. I talk about open questions, I've talked about closed questions, and I want to show how you can incorporate that. And then we're going to get all hands on deck. So by building questions into your discussion and directing them to certain individuals in the group, you reinforce what we talked about earlier, that adult learning theory. You're stimulating, that's Kelsey's word there, the participants' interest and motivating them to listen more carefully. And you can ask several different types of questions. If you see here, you got the direct, the overhead, the open, and the closed. A direct question is asked of one particular person, whereas an overhead question is directed to the entire group. So a direct question is used if you want to get a particular person's attention or draw out a shy member of the group. Kelsey, what do you think we can do to attract new members to our club? Or an overhead question is used to stimulate discussion by challenging the group as a whole. Okay, everyone, in the chat, how can we increase interest in our club? Okay. Then we have the open and closed question. So an open question solicits one's opinion or attitude. So a variety of responses are available. The participant isn't put on the spot because the right answer can fall within a reasonable range. Remember, this is one you can use for those shy or reserved participants. There's no one right answer. So what should our membership goal be for this year? You notice I didn't call anyone out, but it's just kind of a blanket overhead question. We talked about open questions being ideal for certain behaviors, and that will work if you're finding that you're not getting responses. Okay. Lastly is that closed question. These tend to be factual, where the answer includes a specific piece of information. They're usually asked to test the participant's memory or to evaluate the material. They're quick, they're easy. It's a good way to get feedback without using a lot of time. And so I can call someone out, or I can just say, do you know what our membership goal was last year? Very direct, very to the point. And again, who can remember which type of behavior this would be ideal for? I'm going to see. Closed questions are really, really good for those talkative members, the ones that want to input their opinion or their attitude or their experience, and they're taking away from the learning lesson. So you just want to give them a direct question and see if you're able to move on. All right. If no one offers an answer, so if I ask a blanket statement or a question and I pause for a few seconds to let the participants gather their thoughts and formulate an answer, you want to give them that moment. Have you been in a meeting where they'll ask a question and then we're on Zoom, so I've got to, where do I find the raise hand function? And I need to unmute and wait. You want to give them that time because there is technological issues. They're also formulating thoughts in their head for that answer. Don't ask a question or avoid asking a question and immediately moving on. Give your participants time to answer. You want to also observe their body language or their cues that indicate that someone has an idea. So when you're in those Zoom meetings, just kind of browse the room and see, you might see someone doing this. And that just simply means they probably want to answer. And if the answer is correct, you want to reinforce the participant's answer by repeating it. If it's incorrect, and I do that with quotation marks because it may not, I don't want to say that there's necessarily incorrect answers, but if it just isn't in line with what you were looking for as a response, you want to rephrase the question or call on someone else. And it could be that their answer applies to something else within the content. So maybe we're going to pin that and we're going to come back to that. Give some sort of positive acknowledgement to what it is that they're contributing. Okay, we're almost done and we're going to get into this exercise, but I want to also just emphasize that when you're developing your questions, make sure that they're simply worded. Avoid technical jargon, and this will reduce any misunderstanding of the question. Ask questions that are thought-provoking, but aren't beyond the participant's realm of knowledge. I'm going to tie this back to that gap analysis. If you're in a room full of tenured officers, you might be able to use some of that technical jargon that they've used before because they've done this role many times. But if you're dealing with a new set of officers, you want to make it simple, something that they can relate to and try to avoid that technical jargon. You also want to amplify points that haven't been fully covered by relating questions to the program objectives. Okay, that was a lot of information. That was a little bit of our lecture, but now we're going to move into everything I just said. How do we make that happen? So I want to ask for 2 volunteers. I'm not going to tell you what you're volunteering for, but I'm going to ask for 2 volunteers. And you can either raise your hand. I got Tessie. And who's the other volunteer?
This is a great time to interject something from the chat. Be comfortable with long pauses. Brandi mentioned letting people have a chance to answer the question. People will speak up eventually, so get uncomfortable with those long pauses. Thank you for that chat comment. And we do have a second volunteer, Brandi.
Yes, we do. Thank you so much. Now, just because we have 2 people who raised their hands does not mean that we're not all involved in this. So the rest of us have a role that we will do as well. But first, I want to talk to the 2 volunteers. So I need to decide which roles we're going to play. And I'm going to say that since Tessie's hand went up first, that I will have her as the participant, which means that Tuck is going to be our trainer. All right. So if we can go to the next slide, I'm going to talk to Tessie for just a moment. Oop. Okay, here we go. Now, Tessie, you are the participant, which means that you are going to be a disruptive individual. And we went over some of these. So you can be a know-it-all, a crab, the silent type, or talkative. And we have some instructions here. Do you have an idea of which one you would lean to? I know.
You don't have to tell us which one.
Okay.
No, we need to know.
Oh, we do. Okay.
Yeah. I know normally in a real world you wouldn't know. Yes.
Okay. And that would be talkative.
Okay, so Miss Tessie is going to be talkative. So of course you have an opinion on how to close a sale, or this one is more built towards sales, but it doesn't have to be. So let's say, of course, you have an opinion on how a particular role should be done. And as a matter of fact, you've already spoken several times, but you feel that you should be heard again. Okay, now keep that in mind as you're thinking of what you're going to say. Now let's move on to the next slide. And this is going to be for our trainer. So we know that Tessie is going to be talkative. There we go. So, Tuck.
Kelsey.
Remember that these people are long-winded. They monopolize the entire conversation. And since it's important for other participants to have the opportunity to contribute, it's your responsibility to deal firmly with the talkers, okay? So we have some intervention techniques here for the talkative person. Suggest that they participate in active listening, all the things you see here. Okay, so I'm going to give y'all just a couple of minutes to think about what you're going to say and how you're going to overcome that obstacle or that behavior in the class. Now, the rest of us, we're going to observe. We're going to give that opportunity to provide that feedback. I want you to pay attention to what they do well in terms of overcoming that and there's not a slide for this one. This is just talking. Overcoming the behavior and what you might do, things that maybe you've encountered before that were similar that worked, things that didn't work. So that's where the rest of us are going to come in. Okay, so I'm going to give Tessie and Tuck just another minute to think about how they're going to talk about this. While our DJ apparently might be incorporating some music. And then we'll start the show.
Feels like table topics is coming up. Yeah, okay.
Yes, it is. And I think it's time, since the tune ended, for us to go ahead and get started. So we're in a meeting, we're in a TLI session, officer training session, and Tuck is leading the session. Tessie has some things to say. Let's hear how this goes.
Excuse me, Tuck. I have a question for you.
Yes, Tessie. What's going on?
You tried to explain earlier what this particular role person is supposed to be doing. Have you decided, has that person defined the recipient?
Well, Tessie, you know, when we went through that, I asked for comments from everybody and you didn't raise your hand at that time. So what is the question that you really have right now that's burning inside you?
Have you identified the other person's needs, wants, and desires, and how can you fulfill them?
Tessie, I certainly have, and we did cover it. Now, if you were to go ask, say, Donna, what would you think about what the point that Tessie's bringing up right now? Do you have something there, or maybe Kelsey, could you contribute to clarifying this question for Tessie?
I'm comfortable with this. I'd like to revisit it, but I'm not sure I want to revisit it right now. I want to have a little more time to digest.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. All right, but Tessie, we got a little bit of time, crunch here, so we really need to move on. Can I sum it up with, maybe one word?
Go ahead.
Focused. A focused individual is the person we're going to use for this particular example, and then we're going to take it from there. And we're going to build upon it in a later discussion. So, thank you for your contribution, and let's move on.
I wasn't finished.
I'm sorry.
I wasn't finished.
Okay. Well, then all right. Can you sum it up and say next 30 seconds or so?
It's not quite enough time.
Well, then let's talk.
I will concede that you do need to go on to something else. So I'll hold comment for right now and talk to you later.
I'll tell you what. Let's get together the next break, and then we can discuss your concern there and see if I can find an answer for you. Does that sound fair?
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Back to you, Brandi.
Wow. I find myself sometimes in a Toastmasters meeting, I have a role and I'm supposed to count ahs and ums, and I'm so mesmerized by what they're doing. I noted nothing. That was amazing. I promise we did not practice this ahead of time. Thank you so much for participating. Hands off to you both. Now, right? Let's see. You wouldn't know you could be that difficult. What's happening? Okay. Awesome job by you both. Now, this is where the rest of us come in. What did y'all think? What did you observe? What did you see that could have been done differently? What did you see that you thought, hey, I'm taking notes and I'm using this in my own session or in my own club or at home with the kids? You know, what is it that, what feedback, what gifts for growth do you have regarding the situation? We can have that verbally or in the chat. I know we saw a couple of things already. A great closed-ended question. Can you summarize in one word?
I like the phone a friend. Anybody else pick up on that? Lifeline that Tuck used.
Good. I liked how he made it. He kind of compromised. All right, well, I get that you're not done, but let's meet during the next break and see if we can resolve it there. Kind of let's take it offline type thing.
I think Chuck came off a little bit passive aggressive at the beginning, but in a session, I think he would be more prepared and say, thank you for your question. However, we've, you know, etc.
I agree.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I saw that although there was some conflict, but there was still a level of respect that they had for each other. That was very interesting to me.
That is true. And it's, Tuck said something at the beginning that, oh, it's a table topic session. And I think that had a lot to do also with the music, but this is where your table topic skills come in. You're presented with something that is not part of the script. You have to go off of your own knowledge and your own way to respond. And that is definitely where those skills come in. Any other thoughts? Have you ever encountered a talkative person or a silent person, a crab, a know-it-all in any of your sessions? And if so, what were some techniques that you used to get over those? Or what was something that you would have, you know, you can ask the group, how could I have overcome this? Tessie. Uh-oh. There you go.
Okay. Not in a facilitator session, but in a particular meeting, there was an individual there. Back up. I was the Toastmaster for the meeting. And there was an individual there that has been a very long time member of Toastmasters. And I'm going through my script and I come to something and this person says, you should have said that earlier. And I said, okay. And I went on and he said, well, you don't need to be doing that now. And I have about 3 choices in my own repertoire. I can give him the mommy look. I can say, as Toastmaster, it is my opportunity to run this meeting the way I like. Please be patient with me. And the other opportunity to say was, I'm getting to that. So you have various opportunities to correct something or someone without being dictatorial about it. And that's all I have to say.
I love the mommy look. I use that, but generally at home, not in meetings. But, you know, that kind of comes back to, and this is a completely different session, but knowing, especially when you're in a Toastmasters meeting, you know your members a little bit more. You kind of know what their personality is. So you know if they're more direct, you know if they're more, you know, what type of personality that they have, and you can respond a little bit better. But if you're in an officer session, you may not know the people that are there, right? And you may not know exactly how they might receive information that you're giving them in terms of trying to combat this difficult behavior. That was a very good example. Are there any other examples of times where you've been in a meeting or you've been in a session? Maybe you weren't the one facilitating, but maybe you saw it happen. Or you observed a facilitator who encountered a talkative person, a silent person. How do you think that you would pull someone out if they're not responding or if they've kept their camera off. And again, I hesitate to say that because sometimes we have families, we have things going on behind us. That's one thing. But if it's just someone who is not engaging, how would you approach that? How would you combat that? Miss Donna?
Well, first of all, you say, I don't want to put you on the spot. And then you put them on the spot. You say, I see so-and-so online, and I'm just curious about the way you feel. Now, you don't have to respond if you don't want to, but if you have a moment, could you share your impression of this? Very open-ended. So you use the Yoda method. I'm not going to put you on the spot, and then you put them on the spot. It's the contradiction thing, Yeah.
Yes, I hear that sometimes, especially at work. I don't mean to interrupt, but you interrupt, right? But one thing I love about how you explain it and those examples that you provided is that you were quote unquote calling them out, but you were encouraging and you were motivating and you had a soft tone. So it wasn't like, hey, I am putting you on the spot, tell me an answer now. It was, I acknowledge you. I recognize that you're here and I'd love to hear from you. If you wouldn't mind, let us know what you think, or, and then you can always offer alternative ways to respond. So I like the approach that you took as well.
I'm going to take this opportunity to interject an alternative way to call people out without calling them out.
Okay.
You can invite someone that we haven't heard from today, which I am doing right now. Is there someone we haven't heard from today that would like to share an experience of where they witnessed or were the facilitator where they were overcome difficult people? I'm not going to call out people by name that have not spoken yet today. They know who they are. I'm just going to invite them and give them the opportunity to contribute. Jin Lim has raised his hand. Go ahead.
Well, before I get to answering that question, I want to say that I have been all for this disruptor in my professional career, so I know how annoying I can be in a meeting. And kind of as a facilitator, one of the techniques that I use is something I learned a long time ago in one of the law school classes, that I try to summarize the disruptive, I guess it's key point. I try back to the audience and asking specifically, does anybody disagree with the viewpoint? And let the audience speak.
I like that. I like that.
And then that divert the whole conversations. And then I come in and close the whole conversation, trying to have a balanced viewpoint. Then we move on.
I love that. Because sometimes you may find yourself in a situation where I'm on the spot as a facilitator. I don't know how to respond. My mind is going because what? But you open that up. So not only are you opening that up to find out what others' thoughts are, and we saw that where Donna was the phone a friend in Tuck's example. So you kind of open it up to someone. You can open it up to the entire session, have them contribute, and then you're also doing what we've talked about throughout the entire training, and that is that engagement, and you get those others to contribute. I love that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Anyone else that hasn't participated yet today want to share anything? And now we're illustrating that getting comfortable with long silences. Someone will contribute eventually.
They will. Look at that. Peggy, how are you?
Kelsey, I saw you looking at me. I'm doing great. All of these examples are wonderful and I've experienced all of them, but I've also experienced like the situation that Jen had suggested, where you take it and then you turn it around and ask other people. But if you're unfamiliar with that person that initially asked that question, it could quickly backfire, because then they're going to feel like you're ganging up on them. So it's a great point, and most people don't take offense, but I've been in a position where people have taken total and complete offense, because they're like, why are you attacking me? And So my point is, and that those situations where you open it up to other people to do it, which is a fabulous idea, but then you also have to kind of look and see how that person's reacting to you opening it up. And if it looks like they're reacting in that negative way, say, you know, I've always said, you know, that's a very interesting point, and I would like to see if other people find it interesting. It's not, you know, it's not any kind of negative aspect against one or the other. It's just, that's an interesting point. Why don't we see if anybody else has other interesting points or wants to say something about it? So then you're taking it off of that person's comment and still addressing it, but then you're closing them off too at the same time.
I like that. I like that a lot. And it is something to consider, is that, and that kind of goes back to knowing, if you can, I mean, in these officer training sessions, you may not know everyone, so you may not know their personality and how they might receive the response or the technique that you use. Very, very good point. We have to try to read the audience. And if we find that, as Peggy just explained, that that person may have taken offense to it or have felt like they were being attacked or something along those, if they received it negatively or how we did not intend for it to be, what would be a good way to come back from that? And this is all hypothetical.
I was going to say, obviously. Are you asking me or everybody?
No, everybody. Asking everybody. What would be some suggestions if you find that either in this example or in any of the examples, if you're dealing with a talkative person, the silent person, the crab, and the technique that you're using, you see maybe a look on their face that makes them feel uncomfortable, what's something that you can do to kind of fix that? That's not the intention. And how do you make them feel comfortable? Any suggestions?
Well, we could start with saying something like, I completely understand what you're saying or where you're coming from. And then add the word, but how about if we look at it this way as well? And then ... Whatever, whatever that looks like, you know. Yeah.
I like it. I like that. Any other suggestions?
A lot of times just acknowledging that there may be an issue. People like to be heard. People like to feel validated. So if you acknowledge their issue and then give them an alternative, like Eva recommended, I think it was Eva recommended, let's look at it this way. I would refrain from using the word but.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me. But acknowledge them and then offer a suggestion.
I like that a lot. And I've heard that too, to avoid the but, maybe incorporate acknowledging their comment or their contribution or whatever it is that they're saying and following it with, and let's also consider this alternative. I think that was something that I've always been taught. Okay. Very good. And again,
I have one more thing. And on top of what Nifa had said, I mean, I'm with her about using the but, because then everybody always like, oh, now they're going to undo what they just said. And we could also use it as, if you see that they're having that, you know, oh, we can always turn around and say, you know, that was an interesting viewpoint, but interesting viewpoint. However, do you think that, how would you work it in a different way? Like ask them, but Jesse is the best. Yeah, Jesse. I thought you were going to write something else. You could ask them and kind of put it back on them when somebody says something and they look like that they're being attacked. You can go back and say, what are your thoughts? You know, do you have an opinion about the differences between your way and this person's way? What are your thoughts on it? And then it's validating them. It's bringing them back into the conversation and letting them know that, you know, they're acknowledged, they're seen, they're heard.
Absolutely. And you're having that discussion. You're allowing them or providing them an opportunity to provide a solution. And it would be great if others can contribute, but we definitely don't want someone to feel on the spot. It's just never our intention. We just want to have an open and productive conversation, and whatever we can do to maintain that is always a good thing. Donna?
I would just say, wow, you feel very strongly about this and you're very well informed. And this is actually sort of a new concept to me. I can't respond. I'd like more time to consider. I'm not sure we can address that adequately at this time. I'm so glad you raised that, because I like to walk out with things to consider, to grow from. Turned into a big positive and totally deferred it.
It did. And you kind of touched on a point too, that it's something I've has popped in my head a couple of times throughout here. And that is, sometimes you don't know the answer, and that's okay. As a facilitator, we're not the 100% expert on the officer session. We've kind of touched on that a little bit when we say that we want to learn from the tenured officers. But even when there's questions, even when there's challenges that come up, it's okay to say, you know what, I've not encountered that before. You know what, I might need more time to consider that. It's okay to do that. And ideally, you build a reputation of having that transparency. It's okay not to know everything. As facilitators, we're not there just to teach the others in the training session. We're there to learn as well. And so absolutely acknowledge that you may not know. And I think you can also then transition into what we've talked about as well. I don't have an answer for that. Is there anyone that's encountered that? Anyone that could maybe contribute and offer a solution? And you still have that whole class or whole session engagement. Jesse is cracking me up here. All right, any other thoughts on any type of difficult behavior that you've encountered? And again, I don't necessarily like that word because it sounds incredibly negative, but just anything that's been interruptive in any class that you've been in or any meeting you've been in, and some great ways to overcome those. Miss Patty?
In my TLI sessions, I think I've trained 3 now. They're usually small groups, maybe 5, and you encounter the know-it-alls, you encounter the talkers, and you encounter the silent, all in the same group. I don't mind calling out the silent, because if someone would not have called me out 4 years ago and asked me to speak more, I would not have found my voice. This is a safe place for you to have impromptu speaking and provide your opinion. So, of course, if they don't speak, I'm going to understand, but I certainly want everyone in the room to be engaged and to have that opportunity. So I do call out individuals by name and ask if they have a certain opinion. If they say yes, then I know what range they have. If they do not have additional comments, I know what range they have, and I know what I'm working with for the next 50 minutes. But I do want to give them an opportunity to speak and directly call them out so they can grow in that area.
Yes.
My opinion.
It is. No, I love that. It is. I think it's all about the approach. Phyllis mentioned that in the chat. And it also helps us as a facilitator to, we've talked about earlier, and we're going to talk about it again in a little bit, but that evaluation and knowing that they are absorbing what it is that we're training. We need to know that they've got it, and we need to know that if they do have questions, we can address those. We don't want anyone to walk away from our session feeling as, I hear this in contests sometimes, or did I just lose an hour of my life? We don't want them to feel that way. We want them to come away with some sense of motivation and encouragement into this new officer role, or into this officer role that they've held for many years, with something that they can take that may be new or just an alternative way of doing things. So it is important to address the silent type and make sure that they are able to voice their concerns in any way that they feel comfortable. But, one thing we also have to remember, we as Toastmasters, we get paid a lot to come to these sessions. Oh, wait, no, these sessions are voluntary. So it is okay if they choose not to respond. It is okay. But we want to make sure that we're doing our job as a facilitator and that they are actually getting something or that their questions are being answered. Very, very good points. Kelsey, do you have anything else that you would like to add with regard to the interrupter? Oh, no, hold on, Kelsey, one moment. Miss Tessie.
Thank you, Brandi. I just mentally came up with a situation that I don't entirely see in this chart. I was facilitating a secretary session one time, and when I went in the room and everybody introduced themselves and what their experience was, whatever. And one individual said, I'm only here because my club needs the points. I've never been a secretary. I don't want to be a secretary, and you have nothing to tell me, and I'm going to shut up.
Okay, and what was your response?
I said, okay, I'll grant you your wish. And just talked around that individual and accepted his commitment to not talk. How would anybody else have handled that?
I'm interested to know as well. How would anyone handle someone who's telling you that they're there because they're forced to be there, quote unquote, for their DCP points, that they were voluntold? Tuck.
I would do exactly what you just described. I had been teaching in a class and there was a disruptive individual, and basically that's what I did. I called on everybody but her because she was not going to be constructive to the class and was wasting time. So I agree wholeheartedly with what she just said.
Okay. Someone we have not heard from. We did see in the chat though, and that's Dave. Dave, how would you handle this? Uh-oh. You're not showing on mute, but we're not hearing you.
Is that better?
That's perfect.
Perfect. I've got two different listening devices. Yeah, so I'd have a different approach with that. What I think I would do is just challenge the person. Hey, I understand you don't want to be here. It might be that you will find you get something out of it and you got something you can contribute. So we're always interested in different viewpoints and different perspectives in our training. And I'll invite you to stay engaged and see what you can pitch in with it and just give them that challenge.
I love that, because I too was thinking that, I understand that you're here and you're going to get your DC points, but maybe you can help me as you know the role, and I want to see if you might be able to help contribute to any of the questions or anything that I'm saying that you might do differently. I like that. And we had another hand.
That was me.
Hi.
Hi. I was going to say the same. I would engage them and ask them if they could help contribute to the class. Like you've done this before. You're here for the points. I could really use your expertise.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something you can help me elaborate on, I would love for your input.
Absolutely. And something that folks, not everyone knows is that if I need to attend an officer session to get my DCP points or to learn, but I feel like I've mastered that, you can sign up to facilitate the session and still get your points for your DCP goals. You don't have to be the participant. You can be the facilitator. Maybe that's an opportunity that they're not aware of. That's always a different approach. Celeste says it's not just for the club, it's for becoming a better leader. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've talked also today about how, today's things that are happening today, the environment today that we're in is not the same in previous years. It may you may learn something. You may take something away that you didn't realize you hadn't considered before. All right. And I think Miss Tessie has something to add.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All the ideas you've expressed are good, and I would normally take them into consideration. But the individual made it so clear that that particular club was not doing well. They were struggling. They weren't really interested in continuing as a club. And that person had never had that position, had no intention of ever having that. That person was just, he was a place marker. That's all he was.
Yeah. And you do have to take those things into consideration as well. So yeah, absolutely. If you are getting the impression that you may not get much of a response or a positive response from that person, you absolutely do what you think is best for that session. All right, and I think we have time for one more. Miss Kelsey, I know I called on you earlier and diverted, and my apologies.
No worries. I think I might take a little bit different approach to most of you. So I want to propose an alternative solution and see what you guys think about this. Here in D25, we encourage a little bit of accountability. And I might take that opportunity to explain to that person that if you're here for credit, D25 requires you to participate for credit. I might not word it exactly like that, but maybe that person came from outside of our district. And if we're going to reach out to their PQD and tell them that they should give credit to this person, one of our requirements is that they are on camera, that they are interacting, participating in the class. And we also know that life happens and this is a volunteer organization. And so if you tell me I'm attending, but I'm driving and I can't be on camera, then I'm gonna let that slide, right? But hey, I don't want to be here and I'm not participating. That's not credit worthy. And I'm going to introduce that accountability into that situation. I'm going to do it nicely and politely. And if I need to have a conversation with that person outside that session, I might do that also. But especially if it's someone from outside of our district who doesn't know how we do things, I'm going to at least educate them on how we do things.
That's a very good point. Very good point. I want to just end by saying that this takes practice. So the way that you respond to any of the situations that we've discussed today is based on how comfortable you are in that situation. So if any of the alternate solutions or any of the ideas are something that make you feel uncomfortable, you don't have to use them. They're just suggestions on how you may be able to overcome or work with these types of behaviors. Okay, so we've made it through this session. Not today's session. We're almost done with today's session, but we've made it through our officer training session. And now we need to move on to what, Kelsey?
The evaluation portion of every Toastmasters event, right? Just like we ask for feedback when we give speeches, training is a performance and you want to get feedback on your training or facilitating skills. And the purpose of that is feedback is what helps you grow and get better. Luckily, the district makes it easy for you in officer training sessions. We are going to provide you an eval so you don't have to build one. This module goes into a lot of detail about how to build an evaluation. And so we, the district, will take that into account when we build the evaluation for you. But for you, it's going to be easy. You just have to drop the link in the chat to the participants. The district also has a responsibility to provide you that feedback in a timely manner. We want to get you the feedback about your session as soon as possible because it's more relevant when it's more timely. And so just know that Brandi and I, as your TLI co-chairs for this upcoming year, will be diligently working to provide you the feedback as soon as we can, as soon as humanly possible. We are currently recruiting team members to help us provide that timely response to your sessions. So just know that you will be provided an evaluation link as a TLI officer facilitator, and we will get that feedback to you as soon as possible. Next slide, please, Jessie.
Actually, one thing before you move on.
Yes, ma'am.
I remember, I think Jessie had shared a story with me about evaluations. Jessie, can you share that with the group?
Sure, it would be my pleasure. So I want to encourage you all that when you step out, because I'm going to say when and not if, when you step out to be a TLI trainer, think about this. 5 years ago, now almost 6, I was training VPM. I'd only been in Toastmasters for a few months at the time, and I decided I'm going to try to step out of my comfort zone and train at a TLI. I received feedback that day from 2 very seasoned Toastmasters telling me that I did a great job, that I was actually one of the best facilitators they'd actually seen in a while. That feedback has driven me to this day to now continue forward in Toastmasters. So you never know who you're going to inspire and who you're going to interact with at a TLI session. And I would encourage you all again, TLI is where it's at, and we get to train the next generation. And who knows what might be in your class and what you might get out of it, but also who might be sitting in that seat. So that's my little story.
I love it. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, Jesse. That brings me to the resources section. And one of the reasons that I want to make sure that you guys get the resources that are available out there is the whole purpose of today is to make you a better facilitator. So come be a facilitator for us this upcoming year. The resources that you may need to help you be successful as a facilitator start with the D25 website. Anybody know that URL for me? Website address? Anybody? Shout it out.
D25toastmasters.org.
Yes, and I love it that multiples of you shouted it out for me. Thank you. D25toastmasters.org is where it's at. That's where all the resources will be, but I'm going to be more specific and tell you the path of clicks to get to what you need, because I want to make it easy for you to be successful. D25toastmasters.org has a button up at the top of the screen called resources. From there, it's divided into categories, and the category that you want for this purpose is TLI training. Next slide, please. Once you get to TLI training, you may think that the resources should be listed there and clickable for you. There is one more click. View the resources. That first landing page is just a summary page of what you're going to find behind the view the resources click. Next slide, please. When you get to the resources page, it's divided into officer position, and there are many resources for each officer position. There is a facilitator guide manual. There's a PowerPoint slideshow, and there's a PDF slideshow. So depending on what your facilitator computer capabilities are, whether you're virtual or in person, all of that might change which one of those options you choose. And then there is also a video that can be viewed by the officers that attend your session, by you. You may watch that video beforehand just to pull out some nuggets. Yes, ma'am, Lori.
I was just going to say, when I did a trainer, I guess, well, I've done the VPM and the treasurer as a facilitator, and I added a slide in the slideshow, and it was near the beginning as kind of the icebreakers. Whenever you get to know people, saying, who are you? What club are you with? I put that on the slideshow so that people knew what we were doing. So I customized my slideshow slightly.
That brings me to an excellent point that we've been trying to drill into you all along in today's session. Make this presentation your own and adapt it to your audience. That means personalizing the slides beforehand and adapting on the fly once you have that gap analysis result. All right, so what Lori is saying is she added a slide. I love it. Add, take away, remove stuff that no longer exists. There are several references in the TI provided materials to books, printed materials, old program books. We don't use those anymore. And a lot of the officers coming to your training sessions are never even going to have heard of them. I've never even seen a CC manual. We're all just lucky that I know what that term means, because I joined after Pathways was in full force, and I've only ever seen Pathways. So please take out anything that doesn't apply anymore. Even if your club doesn't do it, but it is still relevant to right now, leave that in. If it doesn't exist anymore, take that out. All right, because even if your club doesn't do it, other clubs may do it. So you may still want to leave in things that your club doesn't do, but that are still relevant. Just make sure you get the difference between not being used at all anymore and not being used at your club right now. All right, next slide, please. In addition to the D25 resources, in TLI resources, there are also other club officer resources. And the path to that is d25toastmasters.org, resources, and then over on the left, in that column on the left, the first one is club resources, and then over on the right, club officer resources. So there's lots of clicks to get to these resources. They're kind of buried on the website, but that's why I wanted to make sure that you had the step-by-step, click this, click this, click this. Next slide, please. Because yes, there are more resources for you to be successful. In addition to the 2 website places that we've already gone over, you may have your own resources that you use in your club. For example, the VPE spreadsheet. That's the kind of handout thing that we're talking about earlier in today's presentation that you may want to provide to your participants. For example, for VPE training, I have also typed up a mentor checklist, all the things that a mentor should cover with a new person in my club. And I make sure to tell people that attend my sessions, this checklist is specific to my club, so feel free to make it specific to your club. Just because this is something that I use doesn't mean that you have to use it. It's just one extra tool that might help you be successful. And you want to provide all of those tools and let them decide which ones they use. I use a VPE spreadsheet to do role assignments, and I have created a blank one that other clubs can use as a template that I hand out in my VPE sessions. And sometimes I provide them during the session, and sometimes I provide them after, because I want them to concentrate on what I'm saying while they're in the sessions with me. And I make those determinations based on the experience level of the people in that particular session. One last resource we wanted to mention today is networking groups. You may already be aware of the D25 bulletin board. That's a bulletin board Facebook group, but there is also a VPPR specific Facebook group. And just because the networking group doesn't exist for, say, president today, I'm not saying it doesn't, I'm just saying as an example, if one doesn't exist today, doesn't mean that it won't exist tomorrow, because let me tell y'all, Michelle Davenport has increased our PR reach immensely. So you never know what new resources are going to be out there. So that's why I suggest becoming a member of that D25 bulletin board page and any other social media followings that we offer. Any questions, any additional resources anybody else uses, knows about, wants to share? I'm not seeing any immediate hand raises, but I am going to draw this out and let you continue thinking of things that you use that I haven't already mentioned that you want to make sure all of your fellow facilitators know about. And I'm going to keep talking until somebody says something.
I think also,
Peggy.
Oh, go ahead.
I was looking at your options like, okay, I've done that. There's one thing that I used to do as the VPPR that was very, very effective in the clubs I was a member of, is I would actually give them like questionnaires to just let them fill out their thoughts, how satisfied they are with the club, if there's anything that they feel that is missing that they would really enjoy knowing about or they want more information about. Because then by passing this out to the club members, you're doing multiple things. Number one, you're getting you're taking the temperature of what the club atmosphere is. Number two, you're learning about what that club member specific needs. And then you can formulate a plan with the member or the education, the VPE, to work with that person because this is what they would like to see happen or this is their question. And then it also gives you an idea into what we're doing right and what we were doing wrong, or what they'd like to see changed or what they'd like to see incorporated. So
I love it. I may need that resource too. Thank you for sharing. David, you're next.
What I like to do, especially if I'm teaching something I hadn't taught before, is attend another session, somebody else teaching that program, and learn from them. Use your fellow TLI facilitators as resources. So
Wait,
and
that's another example of you can go to an officer training session that you haven't been elected to. You could go and watch somebody else facilitate to learn from them.
yes.
Learning opportunities all over the place in D25. Thank you for sharing that, David. That is a perspective I had not thought of, actually. So that's a fantastic solution. And I am really glad that's going to be in recording. Y'all are welcome. I see Donna Young next.
Thank you all very much. I would like to suggest that at my home club, I am chronologically the oldest person in the club. Okay. And I would like to suggest to all and sundry here that we are nearly a quarter of the way through the 21st century. And I would like everyone to please recognize that some of the Toastmaster tools were invented in the 20th century. You don't have to use them in the format that you see them. Now, in my club, we have people that are boomers. I won't say who that is. And we have people that are in Gen Z. In fact, the majority of my club is probably Gen Z. So sometimes we have to adapt and speak to people on all the platforms that are native to them. So duplicating communication is good. I send out things via email, and I do the same thing with text. The text is a lot shorter, mind you. But we have to recognize and go to where our members are, whether it's in TLI training or just even in our clubs. And I don't want anyone to get upset. But when someone says, like me, I've been a Toastmaster for 12 years. Take it with a grain of salt. Does Donna have 12 years of Toastmaster training? Or am I doing the same thing I did in year one? And do I have 1 year of Toastmaster training 12 times? So coming out of the TLI, are you going to give people enough, even just one nugget? I challenge you, give them one nugget that ensures that they get not a repeat of what they had last time, but something new and different, because tomorrow is different from today. My words of wisdom. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
1 year of Toastmasters training 12 times. Mind blowing. Somebody write that down in the chat. Mind blowing. Thank you, Donna. Tessie, you're up.
Thank you. I'd like to bring up something. As secretary for multiple years, and I've done facilitator for a couple of years, in reading the when you are a secretary manual 1310, they came up with things in there that is not covered in the training program that we give them. They don't cover retention requirements. They don't cover records that need to be kept. They don't mention several things. How do we get that information out? That's a whole new session in itself.
That is an excellent question. And different clubs may be doing it differently. So not only how do you get that information out, how do you get that information out in a way that allows for people to do it differently? I see Brandi's hand is raised.
Okay.
Hello, I'm on mute. That was not in response to Tessie's, because that's a very good question. I had another comment to make.
Okay, I will just say about what Tessie has just brought up that I'm going to do a little plug for the Strategic Planning Committee in D25, and that committee is working on updating officer training materials. In the meantime, I need some suggestions from you all. How do you think we get that new information into our presentations and out to our members and officers? We talked about removing stuff that no longer applies. How do we add stuff that's new, that's not even mentioned? I see in the chat, add a slide that Lori suggested. That's actually where we started in one of these feedback sessions. I add my own stuff to the slide, right? That's what Lori said.
Yeah. And adding those things that you might handle virtually. So for example, as a VPPR, I'm not printing out anything. I'm not printing out anything and handing out anything, but maybe I'm creating it in a digital format and emailing it. So those are things that are not included necessarily in that material.
Same could apply for VP membership. Are you printing a Toastmasters application or are you emailing a Toastmasters application?
Right.
And maybe you're hybrid and you're doing both. So anything that you know that needs to be added, it's okay to add it.
NIMFA, NIMFA also adds that you can share those with the district. So we should probably think offline of a way that we can get that added information, that valuable information that we can help with the materials. We have a takeaway, Kelsey.
I know that some of those customized slideshows get shared from facilitator to facilitator from year to year, but I don't know that the district has a great way to house all of those documents that need to be kept for posterity, kept for a new person that needs a starting point, kept for business continuity purposes, even though we're not a business. You see what I'm saying? And that's actually another thing that the SBC is working on. So 2 plugs for the Strategic Planning Committee. And I'm going to stop plugging my own committee because I am on that committee.
I did have one other thing in terms of resources. So I know that as a district leader, and others may use this as well, but the only time I've encountered it is as a district leader. And we had, you might have group chats in terms of like texts, but we also used Slack. And so that's something else that may be in use for the different roles. So if you, when you're networking and you might have a group of VPPRs or presidents or secretaries. I don't know if anyone can chime in. I don't know if anyone is aware of any Slack channels for any of the officer roles, or maybe like Discord or Slack. Jen?
I'd like to kind of add a quick comment here. So this is my second TLI, District 25 TLI session. The first one I came, before I was an officer. And I having been in multiple districts and as a Toastmaster for a number of years, I just came to realize that I believe the TLI in the District 25 is an incredible educational tool, way outside the pathway and everything that we've done in Toastmaster. I felt like I just discovered this whole new world as an experienced Toastmaster. I'm curious here, and there's a lot of district leader here, and I get to meet a lot of you next weekend. Is it possible for us as a district kind of just put non-member, non-officer attending TLI sessions and for club to get some sort of recognition at the district level? And therefore we can bring more Toastmaster, non-officer into TLI sessions and benefit that and kind of build on that leadership pipeline that some of you have talked about. This is just for someone who just rejoined. I just joined District 25 4 months ago. And I believe that might open up a whole new, we might get a whole more perspective officer coming into District 25 leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. I'm going to give my email address later in today's session, and I want you to email me about that, and we can talk offline about all the things that you just talked about there. I'm going to bring us back to not resources, because I think that we have exhausted the level of resources that we have available. I'm going to move us on to our wrap-up slide and let Brandi take it away. Actually, I'm not going to let Brandi take it away. I'm going to keep it. Sorry, Brandi. I just want to quickly review the steps that we talked about today. We went over how to do a gap analysis, figuring out the experience level of the Toastmasters in any given session, and then how to adapt your training on the fly to those specific needs of your audience, how to vary your training methods and use the right one for the right situations, how to manage difficult behaviors. Tessie, wow, I've never seen her be difficult like that. Amazing. And then how to evaluate, and the fact that the district is going to make that portion easier for you and provide you timely responses. I'm going to ask for some more participation. What is one thing that you learned today that you plan to apply to your officer facilitator session? And yes, I am assuming you're going to facilitate an officer session. So I'm going to write your name down for one of those sessions. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to volunteer you for anything. You get to volunteer. What is one thing that you could use in your officer facilitator session? Not everybody at once. Raise your hand. I will call on you. I do see some stuff coming in the chat. Keep that up. John, go ahead.
I would be more intentional about making it my own. I did a couple of TLI sessions this year, and I pretty much went off of the deck that was on there, and it was a little and I made it work, but make it mine.
Make it your own. And I have a similar process in that I use what is provided for the first time or two, and then I learn as I go what needs to be updated and how to make it better. And that process is okay. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time you do it. You're going to learn and get better. That's what we do here in Toastmasters. Who else has something that they learned today that they can take with them to their next officer facilitator session? I do see in the chat everything. Thank you. Thank you for that. Who wants to share one nugget of, I'm going to do this?
Well, Niva also said that she does not have to know everything. And for me personally, that's always a good thing because I only have so much room up here. And there's a lot of stuff in there already. So it's okay not to know everything. You get to learn while you're training.
Absolutely. We can learn from the people that we're teaching. She put another nugget in there, celebrating learning.
I love that.
People who are not officers attending training is a way to celebrate learning. I'm totally using that line. Who else? Who else has something to share? I am seeing lots of stuff come into the chat. Keep that up. But I want you all to hear somebody else's voice right now besides Brandi and I. So somebody be willing to come off mute and shout out something that they learned today that they are definitely going to use in their next officer facilitator session. Tessie.
Yes, I have learned today that I can modify what that standard TLI training session is to provide information that new secretaries, old secretaries can use that they don't have right now.
I love it. Not only can you, you should. We are telling you today that we want you to edit it and make it your own. Number one, because it's extremely outdated and needs to be edited. But number two, it'll be more effective if you make it your own. Angela.
Yes, I have learned today that we're carrying the torch for the newcomers so that Toastmasters can perform 25, 30, 40, 50 years from now.
Keeping the dream alive. I love it. I'm seeing in the chat a very valuable point. TLI deck seems to stress the what, not the how. A lot of times folks are looking for a new or different how. And that right there is one of the most valuable reasons for coming to an officer trainer session. You learn how other people do it, and that sparks new ways for you.
Yes, and I want to acknowledge Phyllis's comment about being positive, energetic, and inviting. This is a safe space, just like any of our Toastmasters meetings. So we want to be positive. We want to be energetic. We want to invite those that are there to contribute. And we would just want to make it an overall productive and effective and successful session.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you guys for being so willing to share today. I am really now going to turn it over to Brandi for our last slide.
Oh, I didn't know, but so Miss Patty has a question. I'm going to ask this one to Jessie. Jessie, are we able to tell anyone about the general session topic yet? Do you even know what it is?
I do know what it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'm not going to give the full spoiler. I'm just going to give a little teaser and just say, you're going to have to come to find out. But don't worry. I'll say this. If you like being positive, supportive, all of the great things that are absolutely in the mission statement, especially that positive, there's your hint. Positive, we might just have a CLI for you.
Oh, so we have to wait? We have to, how long do we have to wait, Jesse?
Well, don't worry. Funny you should ask, because guess what? The first TLI will be in 3 weeks from today on the 24th. So yeah, I know. Before the TLI session even technically, or the new year even starts, you can not only get your club officer list in, but you can also get your club officer training done. Or if you're just that eager, you can find out what the general session is going to be about also. So yep, it'll be right back here on the 24th on a Saturday at the same time. You all did it today. You can do it again. It's going to be exciting. Maybe a little
I'm excited.
Positive. Might be something there. Just saying.
I'm
gonna
seeing
have to
some
go.
very high energy in Jesse right now. I'm just gonna leave it at
You know,
that.
it's just it's
Lot of
what I
high
do.
energy.
Look up. You know what? Hold on. Oh, yeah. It's so fun. What can I say?
He's having a hard time.
I was gonna try to put on my cheerleader outfit real quick, but then I thought nobody wants to see that again. So we'll just kind of, maybe we'll save that for another day.
You know, it's hard for Jesse to contain his excitement. So we do have an exciting session coming up, and just, you have to be there. You have to be there. So June 24th is when you'll be able to learn what that is going to be. But you know what else happens? So at the TLI sessions, right, we have the general session, and then what comes next? After that, there's some officer training sessions. Do we have trainers for these sessions yet, Kelsey?
We have some, but we do not have all. Jesse mentioned June 24th being the first session, but there are 5 more after that. And I will be filling those facilitator roles as quickly as possible. So right now I am dropping my email address in the chat. If you are so inspired by today's presentation that you know you want to facilitate an officer session, please reach out via email and let me know which officer session you want to teach and what day you're available to teach it. All of them will be virtual except maybe that first one. We are still working on determining those options. And Jesse, when will all of the dates be available on the website, or are they already available on the website?
In the next week, we should have that all up on the website is the goal.
There you go. So hang on to my email address and let me know what session you want and when.
Yes, I think we can also confidently say that all of the district-sponsored TLI sessions will either be on a Friday, a Saturday, or a Sunday. Not all in the same weekend, but those are the dates that we have throughout the months of June and July. Now, remember, you'll also have some additional TLI sessions that are division sponsored. So if any of those timeframes don't work for you, you can still train at those sessions as well. We just don't have those dates yet. Okay.
Excellent. Last slide, please. Brandi, you
Final.
have one more final.
I had one more question I want. So we're talking about, so let's see, wait, there's the general session, there's the TLI officer session, supplemental sessions. That's another thing we're looking for. So I will drop my email in the chat as well. So if you are so inclined as to lead a supplemental session during any of the TLIs this summer, let us know what that is. Now, I have 2 so far. And could definitely use some more. So you would let us know your topic. What is it, something that you would like to train? Is it something that you've seen before that you want to train, or is it something you've led before that you want to train? Let us know what that is. Now, remember, you do get, there's benefits for you. Not only do you get that training experience, but you also can use that as one of your speeches for your pathway. It's just all around a benefit. So I'm going to drop my email in the chat. Let me know if you are interested in leading a supplemental session. For anyone that is unfamiliar with what exactly that is, it's an hour-long session, much like many of the officer training facility sessions, but you design the content. You are the one that is going to lead that topic of your choice, but it's something that can be beneficial for members of our District 25.
And I just want to put a plug in for if you want to be a supplemental session facilitator and don't know what topic you want to teach, come to Brandi anyway, and we can help you brainstorm some ideas. I've actually had some supplemental idea sessions submitted to me by someone who said, I can't teach these this year because I'm doing XYZ other things during that time, but here's some topics that I would want to see in a supplemental session. So if you want to facilitate and don't know where to begin, email Brandi, we'll help you out.
If you have a topic that you want to hear about that you don't necessarily want to lead, but you'd love to learn more about, help us out with that as well. Okay, I think that was it. I think I've got the whole sessions. We're good to go, but now we want to know, what are your